When Marcus first heard about Evelyn Hart, he thought she was nothing more than another smooth-talking entrepreneur with a flair for dramatics. She ran seminars in hotel ballrooms, promising financial freedom and luxury lifestyles to anyone who would buy into her exclusive program. Her pitch was polished, her smile warm, her confidence magnetic. People handed over their savings, their trust, and often their last hope for stability, believing she held the key to a better life. Marcus had been one of them. 2 years earlier, he had scraped together $10,000, money meant for his daughter's college tuition, and wired it to Evelyn's company after sitting through one of her carefully staged events. She had locked eyes with him during her presentation, as if speaking directly to his soul, assuring him that he was just one decision away from rewriting his destiny. The program promised mentorship, investment strategies, and insider access to markets that would never fail. What he got instead was silence. Emails went unanswered. Phone numbers were disconnected. The website evaporated overnight. His money was gone, his pride with it. He told no one, burying the shame, but the memory burned. For months he tried to rebuild, working double shifts, keeping his anger hidden under a mask of exhaustion. But when his daughter deferred her first year of college because the tuition wasn't there, the weight of his mistakes sank deeper. He swore to himself he would find Evelyn again. Time passed, and one evening, scrolling through social media, Marcus's pulse quickened. Evelyn's face appeared in a sponsored ad, smiling as brightly as ever, but now under the name Eva Harlow. She was running the same scheme, different branding, same promises, same lies. Marcus recognized the patterns, the catchphrases, the way she wrapped desperation in glitter. Something in him hardened. He wasn't going to be her victim anymore. He was going to be her end. He began collecting evidence. Every video, every post, every PDF brochure she uploaded, he downloaded and archived it. He joined her new program under a fake name, carefully recording every call, every scripted piece of advice. He made contacts with others who had been scammed, quietly messaging them, gathering stories, names, bank transfers. The pattern was undeniable. Dozens of lives shattered in her wake, yet she was thriving, flaunting her wealth with photos of yachts and champagne. Marcus knew that exposing her publicly would only make her vanish again. He needed to hit her where it hurt most: her reputation, her empire, her freedom. He built an anonymous website, the heart of the scam, and began posting his findings, complete with voice clips, transaction records, and testimonies from victims who trusted him with their pain. Slowly, the site gained traction. People searching her name began to find his work. Whispers turned into conversations. Conversations turned into warnings. Evelyn noticed. She released a defensive video, smiling through gritted teeth, calling the allegations jealous lies from failed students. But Marcus was ready. He leaked a recorded call where she admitted to altering client contracts, laughing at how gullible, desperate people could be. The video went viral, tearing through her polished image like glass under pressure. Her following fractured. Still, Marcus wasn't finished. He had traced her shell companies and offshore accounts, linking them to a trail of fake consulting firms. With the evidence in hand, he anonymously submitted the package to federal investigators. It took months, but the walls began to close in. Evelyn's lavish lifestyle grew quieter, her ads fewer, her smile tighter. Then came the day Marcus had waited for. News outlets reported that Eva Harlow, also known as Evelyn Hart, had been arrested on charges of fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. Cameras captured her being led into custody, her designer sunglasses failing to hide the panic etched on her face. Marcus watched the footage in silence, his daughter sitting beside him. She didn't know the full story, only that her father seemed lighter than he had in years. She asked if he was happy. He didn't answer right away. Happiness wasn't the word, something closer to release or justice. For once, Evelyn Hart wasn't smiling. That night, Marcus deleted the website. He had no need for it anymore. The world knew what she was, and the system would deal with her now. He stepped outside into the cool air, listening to the quiet, and for the first time since that day in the hotel ballroom, he felt like the ground beneath him was steady again. Marcus thought it was over after the arrest, but something inside him kept turning, restless and unsatisfied. Justice, he realized, moved slowly. Evelyn was out on bail within weeks, her lawyers arguing that she was the victim of a smear campaign. She still had money hidden somewhere, enough to fight, enough to try and claw her way back into the game. The sight of her walking freely, smirking as she entered the courthouse, tightened something in Marcus's chest. He had waited too long for her to vanish in handcuffs. Now, it seemed, she wasn't done yet. So he stayed watchful. He tracked court dates, read every article, followed the threads of her influence, like a hunter studying tracks in the dirt. Evelyn had always thrived on control, her audience, her clients, even her enemies bent to her rhythm. Marcus refused to play along. Instead, he built new alliances. Through the victims he'd helped, he found a retired investigator who had once chased financial frauds for a living. The man, gray-haired and methodical, agreed to help fill in the gaps. What they uncovered wasn't just fraud, it was betrayal on a scale even Marcus hadn't imagined. Evelyn had ties to real estate scams, credit card rings, even identity theft. She wasn't just a con artist, she was an empire of deceit in high heels. Marcus began leaking more. Anonymous packages arrived at journalists' desks. Confidential memos slipped into the inboxes of regulators. Step by step, he stripped away the layers of her persona until nothing remained but the rot underneath. He wasn't reckless. Each move was timed, each release sharpened like a blade. Evelyn must have sensed it, because her videos grew desperate. She cried on camera, swearing she was misunderstood, playing the victim with trembling lips. But the cracks in her voice betrayed her. One night, Marcus received an email. No subject line, no name, only the words, "I know it's you." His pulse thudded as he read it over and over. Evelyn had found him, or thought she had. He closed his laptop, double-checked the locks, and sat in silence. Fear crept in, cold and thin. But alongside it rose something stronger, resolve. If she wanted a war, then she would learn what it felt like to lose one. The final blow came not from Marcus's hand, but from his patience. Federal agents, armed with the evidence he had funneled, raided one of her properties. Hidden safes were cracked open, laptops seized, offshore accounts frozen. Cameras once again showed Evelyn being taken into custody, but this time there was no bail, no smirk. She looked older, smaller, as though the weight of her empire collapsing had finally bent her spine. Months later, when the trial ended with a conviction and a prison sentence long enough to erase her future, Marcus attended the hearing. He sat in the back, silent, watching as the woman who had once stolen his money and nearly his hope was led away in chains. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment. There was no recognition, no triumph, just a quiet acknowledgement that she had finally been outplayed. When Marcus walked out of the courthouse into the sun, he didn't feel triumphant. Revenge wasn't sweet, not in the way stories suggested. It was something colder, like a door closing behind him. He hadn't won back his daughter's lost tuition, or the years of work he'd given up to rebuild. But he had taken something from Evelyn that money couldn't buy back: her power, her mask, her ability to harm anyone else. And for him, that was enough. He returned home that evening, sat across from his daughter at dinner, and listened to her laugh about something ordinary. For the first time in years, her laughter didn't sting him with regret. It sounded like a beginning. Prison stripped Evelyn Hart of everything she once clung to: the tailored suits, the adoring audiences, the staged perfection of her brand. Inside those walls, she was just another inmate, her sharp tongue and charm reduced to background noise in a place where no one cared about motivational speeches or promises of wealth. She tried, at first, to build a following even there. She gathered women around her, told stories about her glamorous life, hinted that she had secrets that could make them rich when they got out. But the game didn't work the same way behind bars. No one cared about her yachts or her trips to Milan. In a world of concrete and steel, the currency wasn't promises, it was respect, and Evelyn didn't have much of it. At night, in the bunk that smelled faintly of bleach and rust, she thought of Marcus. She didn't know his face, not fully, but she could feel his presence like a ghost that had hunted her into this cage. She replayed every news article, every leak, every moment her empire crumbled, and beneath the anger was a chilling awareness. Someone had orchestrated her downfall with precision. Someone she'd underestimated. The thought festered, driving her half mad. Meanwhile, Marcus lived quietly. His daughter was back in school, and though money was still tight, he carried himself differently now. He no longer felt like prey. Some nights, he'd catch the news when Evelyn's appeals were dismissed, or when yet another victim testified against her, and he'd feel that steady calm again. He never told anyone of his role, not even the closest of his allies. Let her stew in the mystery. Let her wonder. That, he thought, was its own kind of sentence. Evelyn tried to fight the system. She filed complaints, spoke of conspiracies, hinted that she had been targeted unfairly. But each time she opened her mouth, prosecutors unveiled more evidence, more testimonies, more of Marcus's carefully planted trail. Her reputation withered until she was nothing more than a footnote in stories about fraud and greed. Years passed, and Evelyn's face grew older in the rare photos that leaked from the prison system. The sparkle was gone, replaced by the hollow look of someone who had run out of masks to wear. She had once thought herself untouchable, above the law, above ordinary people's rules. Now she was a cautionary tale. Marcus, on the other hand, found something resembling peace. He didn't gloat, didn't seek fame for what he'd done. His revenge wasn't about glory, it was about balance. He had tipped the scales back, not just for himself, but for every person she had preyed on. Sometimes he would walk by the hotel where he'd first met her, the ballroom now hosting weddings and trade shows, and he would pause for a moment. He could almost hear her voice, slick and confident, promising dreams she could never deliver. And then he'd walk on, knowing those days were over. Evelyn's downfall wasn't loud in the end. It wasn't a dramatic collapse, but a slow erosion, piece by piece, until there was nothing left of the woman she pretended to be. In her final years behind bars, she stopped talking about wealth and freedom. She stopped talking altogether. The silence that had once haunted Marcus became hers instead, an echo she could never escape. And Marcus, who had once been broken by her deception, learned something Evelyn never could. Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about survival. He had survived her, and she had not survived him.